Hey, we're live. This is WeatherBrains, episode number 586. It's the pre-show, the magical time of the show where we talk about, what do we do here? We say outrageous things. We share boring personal stories and humorous anecdotes. And we get our little headsets plugged in here. So pre-show time. Now I think I can hear. Bill looks like he has gas. Every time Bill has that look on his face, every time you look like that, there's a problem. Do you have a problem?
No problems. I actually invited the guests tonight. 2 straight shows. I forgot to invite the guests.
Okay, let's see if I got
they're only the most important part of the show.
Let me see if I got the.
Well, tonight we're only going to have a 10-minute interview, James, and a 75-minute email segment.
Yeah, Aubrey, we're going to give her 4 hours at least. Let me be sure I got the audio routed right.
Done this show like a sleeper. Uh-oh. Everything's frozen. That's not a good sign.
So let's see here. What have I not done? It's been a weird day. It's like
you've been running today.
Like
I can always tell by your Twitter feed how hard you're running.
It's been a busy day, but like I got here and, we have 3 news and I had because we had a local story the entire. So they squeezed me in at like the end of the block there. It's on. So at least there is nothing. But for those that don't know, in this state, the governor resigned today. And we'll leave it at that. In the words of Forrest Gump, that's all I got to say about that.
You love when your breaking news from the New York Times is about your state. It's always great to have.
I do have some funny graphics I better not show here because you never know. They might pop in the TV thing early. Some of this stuff, sometimes all you can do is laugh. If you just can't laugh,
right?
You just can't laugh. Let's see here. And Brian,
we got all our guests on, James. It's just us and our 2 guests.
Hello.
Hello, Dr. Orff. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Sure. How do I sound? I sound okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So. James, you got need anything?
Nope.
All right.
Oh, a beer would be nice.
Yeah, we'll have to send out. We'll send Brian over in the plane to Madison. I'm sure there's some good place. Maybe at least some cheese curds or something.
There you go.
What's the really good place for the hamburgers over there?
Daddy Dumplings.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yep.
The only other place in America I had Ethiopian food was in Madison, Wisconsin.
Madison, yeah, we got that too.
We actually have an Ethiopian restaurant in Birmingham now, James. Have you been yet?
Oh, no.
What is this?
I'm leaving that alone.
Well, since I didn't even realize who those people were.
Just don't even ask.
I threw up in my mouth a little.
I will say that was a funny movie. Mrs. Doubtfire, that was a funny movie.
Is that what that was about?
Not necessarily. Oh,
Rick,
boy.
Save us, Rick.
No, we're going to give Aubrey 4 hours to answer emails and read them tonight. And I promised some guy we were going to talk about a topic that I promised.
What would happen if you were dropped in a desert island with no weather information?
Yeah.
Would you survive?
Yeah. Yes.
They my golden weather handbook from my childhood.
You get a lot more sleep, I bet.
That's true. Aubrey's just teasing us. I don't even think she's really going to be here tonight.
No, she just hung up
Popped
on us.
And went away. Yeah.
So look at here, man.
We can go at 8. We can go early. Wow. Ooh, I don't like the look of that.
No, the rotation's kind of pooped out. It's occluded, but that was a good looking storm about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, it's going toward my hotel in Ruston. That's not good. Tell it to stop.
Yeah, all the tornado warnings. Well, take it back. There's still one down here.
There's one. Yeah. south of Longview.
All right. Enough of that.
You can screen share too, Dr. Orff. I know you probably know that, but
yeah.
if you have anything particular that you want to share.
Nah. All my stuff looks better on YouTube. I mean, you try streaming animations on this, it'll be terrible. I mean, I guess no, I don't have anything in particular, but you know,
good.
You can put stuff up.
Theater of the mind. Theater of the mind.
Theater of the mind. That's right.
So, Rick, how's that ear recovery process going?
I'm sorry. What did you say?
He's been waiting all night on that one. It's like the Charles Barkley commercial. How long that? It was Spike Lee asking him, how long you been working on that one?
No, I looked at work today. I was
Monday.
looking for some big, huge, old-fashioned headphones to say that my wife took the earbuds away from me.
Actually, Rick sent me an email and asked me to ask him that question on air. So
That's pretty
we
good.
got that out of the way.
So you'll have to explain that to Dr. Orff, Mark, what happened last week.
No, I'm not responsible. It's fully Rick's story. He's here to tell it.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
What a great story it is.
Oh, it's awesome. It's
Sure is.
we only get telemarketer calls on these phones. I don't even know why we have them. Sorry
You still have
about
a
that.
landline?
Well, we had to for a little while because the AT&T signal was so terrible. And then I found out about this wonderful thing called a microcell. And so I guess we're stuck with them for the rest of the 2-year contract. So I need to just unplug them.
My mom, who lives in assisted living, has one of those things. And she says it rings a dozen times a day, and it's all telemarketers.
There's never one real phone call on it.
We are
Never.
paying, AT&T a bunch of money a month for this landline to receive junk telemarketing calls. So it's like, oh.
Yeah, I need to know what's the best thing to do. When they call, should you like mess with them? You like blow a loud whistle?
Well, you make sure she's on the do not call list. That'll get rid of a lot of it. I mean, just
I'm on the
straight
do not
line.
call list, and it doesn't help at all. Does it?
Oh, really?
I think I put her on that, and it didn't help.
Oh, it helped me a ton, but I still get stuff from nonprofits, but not from corporations. Real telemarketers.
Yeah, I think people have found loopholes and ways to get around that, saying,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Charter just gives you the phone number and then immediately mails it out to every telemarketing firm in North
That's
America.
right.
Hey, Rick, maybe you could go with some earbuds like this, bud. Just
hey. They say never stick anything in your ear bigger than your elbows or smaller than your elbows. So
Wow.
that would be safe.
The only thing I regret, we'd have no video of this procedure to pull that thing out of there. I mean, I would.
We
that
had
would
the
be cool.
results on a hospital tray. That was pretty cool.
I almost did it. The doctor was very nice. She came walking in with this long,
We would have stopped the show for that.
yeah, I figured we'll get the breaking news sounder for that. But
Yeah.
You
No
did,
doubt.
but just for the still, even for the video, it really would have been good.
yeah, I thought about at least taking a picture with her, but maybe next time.
We're glad you're okay. That's all that matters.
the problem is the additional things that came out of his ear. He didn't want that on camera.
A Fruit Loop from 1978.
Yeah.
So where's Brian Peters? We got that weird. I'm not going to be here tonight.
What was his reasoning? I forget.
He didn't give a reason. That's the thing. I figured somebody made him mad.
Oh, I figured he's preparing for the Honda Indy Grand Prix of Alabama or whatever he's got to do next weekend.
He did the spotter training.
Yes,
We had a lot of WeatherBrains fans there. We had one that drove over from Atlanta, sporting a WeatherBrains hoodie, which looked good.
We've never been ready this early before, I don't think.
No, we'd start, but we have to wait. We have to wait 2 minutes on the television to join us here. So I'm just staring at my monitor. The minute I see that, we'll start this thing. Now, Aubrey showed up and she ran. That's not good. Because we are so backed up on email. It's like bad.
It's like
All right.
We don't even do it anymore.
No, I feel bad. All these people pouring out their heart and their soul in these emails, and we're like ignoring them. We
should have
read.
like a deputy email officer. Who could we appoint as that?
Bill, you just assigned yourself that job. So you're the guest booking officer, the interview officer, and the deputy email guy.
Well, I get to talk to nice people like Mark and Dr. Orr, so I'm happy. I didn't realize you were on Marshall's show a few weeks ago.
Yep, I sure was.
Until this morning.
That was fun.
Yeah, I bet it was. I haven't watched it yet. I'll have to go back and watch it after the fact.
Yeah, they haven't put it online yet, I don't think, but they do. In a month
I have it DVR'd, but I haven't watched it.
I gotcha. It's spectacular.
I'm sure. It usually is. It's a good show.
Yeah, it's a good show.
Always makes me feel bad to go back and watch somebody he's interviewed after we've been on this show together, and it's like, oh crap, why do I even do this?
Hello, good evening, and welcome to our television viewers watching on television, cable, over the air. You know, we had some guy that was like in Mississippi or somewhere. He was picking this thing up over the air, and he said, "Hey, man, this is awesome." Like a weather weenie, he just kind of discovered it. So, and a lot of people cut the cord, and a lot of people watch this. In fact, at my house, in my office, I have a TV, and all it does is pick up over-the-air stuff, and some of that stuff is fantastic. There's like 21.2, one of these things. It runs these old TV shows all the time. I'll sit there and watch Green Acres, and I cry, and I mean, I will laugh until I cry. That stuff is funny. So
why are we not on the satellites, James? I mean, I looked for us on Dish and all that. How come we don't have the James Spann 24/7 Weather Channel?
Dish and DirecTV do not carry the .2s, 3s, and 4s. They claim they don't have the bandwidth, and it's not a legal requirement that they do carry it. So,
well, they've got extra bandwidth now because they don't carry Channel 13. So.
Well, yes, but in order to the legal deal is they have to air the main HD.1, but they do not have to do the .2, 3, and 4, and they don't. Which is
even if they can't reach a carriage agreement, they have to carry them because they're not carrying them on my Dish right now.
Right. Well, if there's no carriage agreement, then it goes off. Then
I can't watch Meet the Press. I'm very upset.
But it happens to everybody. I guarantee it's going to happen. And, that's the one thing about we don't laugh. I mean, I work for a company called Sinclair, which is the largest operator and owner of TV stations in the country. And it happens to everybody. All the big boys have had their little issues, and we've had them in the past where you go off for a few days and then you finally negotiate a deal. Really? Wow.
Yes. Right.
What is it, Dish?
Yeah. And on Dish, it says something like Channel 13 decided not to be on Dish.
Yeah, that's hers. And that's what they'll do. They'll say, we've been ordered to pull the channel by the owners, and that they, it's all this finger pointing, and it's just bad. Aubrey says, I'm trying to get in. Hangout is having an issue.
Lower the security ratings, James. Lower the security ratings. You guys
aren't showing up on my end. We can see that lovely publicity photo there, but we don't see her in real life. But let's get this thing going here. So Kevin is out, and Nate is out, and Brian is out. So I think this is it. So here we go. Let me get the recorders going. Number 1 and track number 2. Get the producer to do the show notes tonight. So here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains episode number 586 for April 10th, 2017. This is the weekly show that's all about weather. Thank you for taking the time to join us. So we are here. Most of our regulars are somehow having the night off. Kevin Selly is out. We have Nate Johnson out. We have Brian Peters that's out. But we have some of the regulars. Yeah, we have some troopers. And Aubrey, it is so good to see you.
It's so good to see you guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, yep. It is so good to see you. Welcome back.
Yeah, sorry, I was having a problem. Hangouts is not working on my computer back here, so had to jump on the iPad back up.
Okay, looking good, sounding good. So, and we're going to give you 4 hours for email tonight, since we have we haven't done an email segment in a while. So we're going to give Aubrey a long time. What's happening in Harrisonburg?
Oh my gosh, it's a beautiful weekend. We were 79 today, 1 degree shy of 80, but it looks like we'll hit 80 for tomorrow. Very dry, but temperatures are very, very comfortable.
I will admit I'm a little concerned the death ridge is setting in where we are in mid-April. This doesn't look good. We are still in a drought where we are down here in the southeast.
Going to go right back in it.
And, I know a lot of people are celebrating the warmth and the dryness because we've had some pretty active, we had the wave train and we had just wave after wave of active storms, but I don't like what it looks like at this point. So hopefully the Death Ridge goes away, at least for a while before the summer gets here. But Aubrey,
Yeah,
we'll give you all. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say the drought monitor even has us kind of outlined for the semi-long-term drought, which is not good, especially after the lack of winter that we've had and lack of spring rain.
Yeah. I just don't like the way this looks. Let's see. Rick Smith, how's your rain situation in Oklahoma?
We are doing okay. We've still got parts of the area in drought, but we got some good rains last week. We got more good rains coming at the end of this week. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. This is just like for a lot of places, this is our wet season. So if we don't get it now, we won't get it. So
Yep.
we're teetering on the edge, just like a lot of areas are.
Yep. So what's your thinking on the core of the tornado season out there, May and early June, where the world converges in Oklahoma to chase storms?
I don't really have a feel. It's starting off slow, and we've learned not to talk about that. You just don't. You don't say, "Hey, hadn't it been a quiet tornado year?" You just because bad things happen when you do that. So forget I said that. I don't know. I think we're going to make up for it. I think we'll have. I think toward the end of April and into early May, seems like we always get busy, even if it's just for a day or two. So we'll see. People ask that all the time around here, and there's just no way to know. We just tell them to be ready for one day. If it happens, one day, one storm is all it takes, as you well know. But I don't know. I'm enjoying every peaceful sunset and every peaceful day I get at this time. So we're ready for whatever happens down the road, though.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the guys down the hall from you at the SPC. It seems like they've been taking some criticism over their outlooks here lately involving the high risks and the moderate risks. Have you had a chance to talk with those guys, Rick? Are they hearing this stuff, and how do they respond to criticism? And I'm not criticizing these guys. They're my heroes. I think they do a great job.
I'm not either. And the people that do criticize them, I mean, you're welcome to criticize them, but I haven't talked to them specifically about it. I mean, they've got a tough job, and they're some of the best people in the world at this, at what they do. And we just have times where the forecast doesn't quite pan out for whatever reason.
It turns out it's actually quite difficult to predict the weather.
Thanks.
Breaking news. That's some breaking news right there.
No, it is. And the SPC has it harder than a lot of us do because they're so visible, and there's people that just hang on every word and every little movement of that pencil thin line that they draw on the maps, and the probabilities, and is it going to go to a high risk? Is it going to be a PDS watch? And then some of those same people that are hanging on every word are the first people to throw them under the bus when it's not perfect or things don't happen just like they thought they would. So it's tough. I'm glad I work where I work. I don't think I could hang with them. They're a special group of people.
Yeah, what these guys are now, they are basically big time mainstream media. They might not want to be that, but they are. For years and years, they worked in Kansas City at Cells and in Norman, and they'd issue the convective outlooks and these products. And really, they weren't distributed to the masses. They went internally to the Weather Service offices and some of the private sector people. But now it's a whole different ball game where every graphic system, every news outlet, they're going to release those products the minute they go, and it's mass distribution. And it is a whole different world, and it's not an easy world.
It is, and they are, just like a lot of weather service offices, they are really short-staffed. I don't know how many people they're down. When Russ Schneider was on a few weeks ago, he talked about this, but there's a lot of other things going on. I'm not saying that I'm not making excuses or anything. I'm just saying that it's a tough job, and it's tough, and like I tell people when I'm giving tours that we may have extended periods of not much weather going on in the summer. You don't really get a break at the SPC. There's something going on somewhere just about year round. So they have a very difficult job.
Yeah, and I would encourage our friends in the weather enterprise, and listen, we all tend to be critical, and it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback, but I'm not so sure the best time to criticize these guys. It's during an actual event.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to go back, and do some research and write a paper about an event, take some time, take weeks and months, and then let's come back and look at it. And listen, I need criticism. The only way I will ever get better is good, constructive criticism, and I'm thankful for that. But when you just lash out at these guys during an event, that doesn't accomplish anything. It just doesn't work. So just think before you get on the tweeter. I'm telling you, if we could all count to 20, not 10, but 20, before you get on the tweeter, life would be a whole lot better. But Bill Murray bringing our guest. We got some important people to talk to here.
Now, at the real Donald Trump, right? There we go.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Tonight's guest panelist is making an encore performance after being on last week. We wanted to get his information that he's sort of collected on validation on long range forecast, but we didn't get to it because we were sort of in an important discussion with Jim Williams for Hurricane City, and it went long. So tonight we welcome Mark Jelenic from What Is It With the Weather podcast all over again. Mark, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. Although I think that Aubrey is going to be taking my time slot this evening. With
the entire interview will be 5 minutes tonight.
I yield to you, Mark.
Oh, I don't know. James is really concerned that you're not getting to these emails, and
they can read them when I'm not here. They do have access to them.
Well,
but you're the email officer.
They've been misplacing their glasses quite often recently, so they need to get around and make sure they get read properly.
So I promise, Mark, after the recorded segments tonight, we and if not, we'll have a rain check and have you back next week.
Whenever.
You had the same hat on as last week.
I do, but it's still timely given
quite an exciting ending yesterday.
It was quite a tournament and quite an incredible ending, and it was fun to watch. I had some family members up there being able to take it on live and in person, but it was a great Masters tournament for sure.
Well, we're so glad you're here again tonight. Thank you, Mark. Remember, you're one of us, so you're deputized. So be ready to jump in at a moment's notice.
Will do.
All right, awesome. Well, tonight's guest, WeatherBrain, received his PhD in atmospheric science from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 1997. From 2003 to 2015, he was the chair of the Department of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences at Central Michigan University. And in August 2015, he returned to the University of Wisconsin as an associate scientist working for the Cooperative Institute for Meteorological Satellite Systems, part of the Space Science and Engineering Center. His research focuses on severe weather, supercell thunderstorms, tornadoes, and downbursts, especially obtaining new insight into the atmosphere by using high-performance computing resources. Dr. Lee Orff, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's a real pleasure to have you. I didn't realize that you were on Weather Geeks a couple of weeks ago. We were in high cotton here having you on our show too.
Well, hey, if you guys hadn't double booked that one, we'd
have been first.
You would have been first. That's right.
That's terrible, but anyway,
oh well, it happens.
Just blame the guest booking office.
That's right. Okay.
It gets crazy around here parts of the year, but your research is fascinating, Dr. Orff. And I read that you did some work in downbursts and aircraft and things like that. And, it's really fascinating to me that we've just virtually done away with wind shear accidents.
Yep, that's right. Absolutely. And when I was doing my the work on downbursts in the 90s, it was funded by the FAA because of the obvious hazard that these things present to aircraft taking off or landing. And after I got my PhD, I was first faculty at UNC Asheville in Asheville, North Carolina. And essentially, the funding went away because it was a solved problem. We now have terminal Doppler weather radars at all of our airports, and pilots are trained how to deal with wind shear hazards. And also the planes have some, I understand the planes have some, gear on them to help to deal with this too. So it's a wonderful thing. You no longer see these horrible aircraft crashes from downbursts. So it's kind of a solved problem from the perspective of aircraft hazard. But there's still interesting phenomena to study from a damage, creating damage, damaging the infrastructure or even causing a loss of life. Although getting straight line winds typically don't exceed EF0, maybe EF1 strength. So you don't typically see a whole lot of fatalities from downbursts from the winds themselves. But yeah, it's funny because I sort of, the downbursts were cooled off until was probably, when did it start? About the early 2000s, I was contacted from a wind engineer out at the University of Western Ontario who was interested in basically improving the engineering models that are used to simulate atmospheric phenomena such as downbursts. The wind engineers have this they call it impinging jet, which I call pipe in the sky. Essentially, it's a giant straw in the sky that blows air downwards. That's the engineering model for a downburst, which on the face of it might not sound too bad, but it's barotropic. There's no density differences, which is almost entirely what drives downbursts in the first place. So I'm still doing work in that area, but it's mostly from the perspective of, trying to either simulate the parent storm to have it produce a downburst, which is what I'd prefer to do, but also using some slightly less brain dead models in the engineering community to do things like see what happens when a downburst hits a transmission line or a small building or something like that.
Yeah, the modeling that you're doing with supercells is extremely impressive. And talk about the computational resources and what it takes to model a supercell.
Sure. So, I mean, we've been modeling supercells since the late 70s, early 80s, when the first 3D models came out, such as the Klemp-Wilhelmsen model in 78, I believe. At the University of Wisconsin, which is my alma mater and also where I'm currently at. Robert Schlesinger is another pioneer of doing 3D supercell modeling. So actually, you can model a supercell on your laptop, but you're not going to model a supercell that produces a long track EF5 tornado on your laptop. That requires supercomputing resources. So essentially what I'm doing is I want to be clear, my research is pretty exciting because of what we've done, but it's really just an extension of what people have been doing for many years, taking cloud models, growing clouds in environments that are known to produce supercells or tornadic supercells, and then just seeing what happens and growing a storm. So what we've done is we've simulated a storm from the 24 May 2011 El Reno EF5, the El Reno 1. And that turned out to be a really good case to try. We started simulating this storm, and immediately, even at low resolution, I noticed it was really spinning up a really strong low-level mesocyclone, which is one of the key characteristics you want to have for a tornadic supercell, at least in my experience with modeling. Because our whole goal here was to get one of these long-track EF5 tornadoes in a supercell without doing anything other than just letting the model run. We didn't trigger the tornado. We didn't spice it up or anything. It's just supposed to happen as the simulation runs. And we tried a whole bunch of different things before that, mostly analytical sounding, so more ideal, smooth atmospheres. But what we got this storm to go at 30-meter grid spacing. So we have the model has got these grid volumes that are 30 meters on a side, which is pretty high resolution. You consider our operational models run at, 10 to 12 kilometers or so. And we get this pretty decent looking EF5 tornado that is, depending on, I've done many simulations in this environment. It turns out they don't always produce tornadoes, which is a very interesting scientific problem as well as a forecasting problem. But essentially, we get this tornado that looks, arguably similar to the one that actually occurred on the ground for a long path and produces EF5 winds for quite a long time. So we're using the Blue Water supercomputer, which is it's on the University of Illinois campus in Urbana. It's an NSF funded machine primarily. The University of Illinois also helps fund it. And it is known as the world's most powerful supercomputer on a college campus dedicated to research. So, I mean, there are bigger supercomputers out there, but, maybe, they're government machines or China, for instance, has the top 2 in the world. But I'd like to see us, maybe try to reclaim that space. But the truth is, you need this supercomputing hardware. And the challenges for me personally, I've spent a decade or more before I even had this simulation, just trying to prepare for it, prepare for the data deluge that was going to be created. Because I always had this vision in my mind that I was going to get this simulation and then I could visualize it really using some nice volume rendering and other techniques that make the storm look like a real storm. And I think we've succeeded pretty well in that. And most of, if you just, Google my name, I'm got a pretty rare name, you'll find some of the stuff I put online. I record my talks and I stick them online. They have the video in them. And essentially, we're just to the point now where we're trying to get into the quantitative nature of this analysis because we've made a lot of these really cool videos, but the videos have a lot of scientific payload in them from the perspective of we can, the picture tells the story, the video tells the story, but when the rubber hits the road, you got to get in there and start doing quantitative analysis Lagrangian parcel analysis, all those lovely forcing terms on the Navier-Stokes equations, the vorticity equation, all that good stuff. That's where we're heading with this research. We're trying to answer questions about why storms like this produce these grinders, these long track EF5s, EF4, EF5 storms, tornadoes, whereas a very similar looking supercell in a pretty similar environment might not even drop a tornado. And we, as you guys all know, we just don't have the capability of making that kind of prediction at this point. So ultimately this work, as is the case for almost all work in mesoscale meteorology, is to produce, other than just understanding things because it's cool, we want to do better forecasting. We want to issue more targeted warnings. We want to issue fewer false alarms. We want to have smaller areas over which we issue our tornado warnings, et cetera. And we want to have them as far in advance as we possibly can. So yeah, that's the gist of it.
So it sounds like, though, since all supercells obviously don't produce tornadoes and the majority obviously don't, is there an ensemble waiting out there to come out of modeling like this, Dr.
Oh, ensembles. Here's what I think. I don't think we should be doing pure deterministic single model simulations anymore. Everything should be an ensemble. Everything. And one of the reasons why is from this particular work. Let me just tell you a short story. So I first got the result a couple of years ago, and I was running out of computer time, and the storm was kind of moving out of the box, but we got the result, and we knew that we had something there. So I went back to try to rerun it from scratch. And with the same environment and only a couple of tiny little knobs turned on the model and no tornado. Okay. So, and I've had this experience with these simulations. They're so sensitive to initial conditions, so sensitive to the environmental, the model parameters you use, et cetera. So I can get an ensemble without trying, just by rerunning the same simulation with only some slight changes in the model parameters. As some of you guys probably know, there's a lot of knobs you can turn in models, especially with things like microphysics, the parameterizations. Even going from like 6th order advection to 5th order advection or something like that changes the solution dramatically. This is just a realization of what Lorentz discovered long ago with the chaotic, the strange attractors and all that. The butterfly flaps its wings phenomenon. It's happening in these simulations. So ensembles are where it's at. I would like to see ensembles at the resolution I'm doing these really, 30-meter runs. I'd like to see 30-meter ensembles, 50 of them. Now that sounds ridiculous. And certainly in an operational context, we're not even close to having that kind of capability, but I could do 50 of these runs on blue waters. I'd use up all my time and I would not be doing what I said I would be doing. But just to make the point, I absolutely agree. Ensembles, we have to go to ensembles for this kind of work. Someday there will be a day, maybe 20, 30, 40 years from now, when we're assimilating radar data really rapidly, and we're running these simulations. We're ahead of the storm and we're getting ensembles out, and we'll have a probabilistic spread of what kind of storm we could expect. It's going to happen, but it's going to take a long time. And it's not just computing technology we need. We need more remote sensing. We need more data from the environment. And I don't know how the heck we're going to get it, especially stuff like temperature and moisture, or, things that are more difficult to detect remotely, right? We've got good sounders, maybe some satellite can help us in that regard, as long as there's no clouds in the way to block what's going on in the boundary layer. I don't think we're going to have, an array of thousands of, in situ, instrumentation all across the Great Plains. But, it's not just the computing. As much as I'd like to say, yeah, just buy more supercomputers. No, we need more observations. And because we got to feed the model the observations to get the better results, in addition to the better computing and better models.
So what does GOES 16 do to things, Dr.
Well, GOES 16, I've been, much like you guys, I'm sure, have been enjoying the heck out of some of these 30-second visible loops that come out unofficial, because it's not operational yet. I think it's going to help. Certainly, we have never been able to sample look at visible imagery from space at 30-second intervals that's a pretty high temporal resolution. So, some ideas that I have, and I'm pretty much firmly in the modeling world. I mean, obviously I keep my eyes on observations, but I'm not a satellite expert by any means. But I'd like to think that maybe there's a way to look at what's going on with the overshooting top maybe both in the visible and or the infrared, that can tell us something about what's going on beneath. And this is another thing where I'm looking in my simulation data. Maybe there's something that's going on near the ground where the tornado is that is being transmitted or telegraphed to the top of the cloud. And if there's some way, maybe if there's some signal that happens a few minutes before, I mean, there's all these ideas, but it's all just speculation. But GO16 probably will be especially useful in these outbreak situations where you need to be being right on top of what's going on. It's gonna, I don't know. I look forward to the real data deluge from GO16 when we start to really see what we can do with it. But it's a good thing, and I'm glad it's up there. I was on pins and needles when it was launching. I think a lot of us were, especially when that hurricane came by a couple of weeks before the launch and was targeted to just nail it. But it got up there, and it was a good launch, and everything's looking a-okay. So we're all looking forward to 16 being fully operational.
Now, when do we expect that to happen, Dr. Orff, or Rick, or anybody?
I saw a chart 6 to 9 months, I think, before it's pretty much gone through all the testing and all that stuff. There's a chart out there somewhere, but it's still going to be a while before it's like fully part of the fleet and being used operationally.
Well, I know I attracted quite a crowd in the local Rooms to Go store on the night of the launch. So,
absolutely.
So I understand. I was looking back today at the report to the administrator because this is the anniversary of the Red River outbreak in your neck of the woods, Rick, in 1979. And the satellite pictures, it really brought back memories of hanging out at the Weather Service in 1979 and looking at those satellite pictures and just thanking our lucky stars for what we have today.
Yep.
Yeah, I was watching Terrible Tuesday today. That's going to be my pick of the week. And they showed the Severe Storms Forecast Center and talking about how they could detect things on satellite. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, we've come a long, long way.
Yeah, I tell you what, part one of that nearly had an NC-17 rating for all the gruesome injuries in that opening part. That was a terrible time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we went back and watched a little bit of it today after your pick came out. That was really cool, Rick. So I stuck it in my post. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So it was an amazing day. I remember that in 1979. We had severe weather a couple of days after that from that same system. Of course, we were fearing Armageddon at that point, and it turned out not to be as bad in our neck of the woods, which was good. But anyway, so you talked about updrafts there and, looking at what the overshooting tops might be doing. How fast are those updrafts in a supercell thunderstorm reaching, Dr.
Yeah, sure. So looking at these high resolution simulations, when I first got this result, I was looking at just instantaneous velocities within the updraft. So like the fastest velocity at a moment in time anywhere. And I was seeing stuff over 100 meters per second. So we're talking close to 300 mile an hour. Now, that's not over a large area. So when you say, okay, what's a typical supercell, like a strong updraft? More like over the volume of the mesocyclone, we're talking maybe 50 meters per second, 60 meters per second. So it's still very, very fast. And when you think about it, it makes sense. In order to support a tornado, you've got to have an awful lot of momentum going up. I mean, it's just kind of makes sense that it would be that way. But instantaneous velocities, which again, are in a model, you can just say, what's the fastest velocity that occurred in the whole simulation? I see easily 130, 140 meter per second instantaneous winds. Now, I don't know how to interpret those. There's some recent work being done at NCAR, for instance, where they're simulating tornadoes, just the tornadoes, like in a chamber, where they impose an updraft at the top of the model domain. It's called a Fiedler chamber or a Llewellyn chamber. And they impose the updraft and get the strong winds. And they're seeing instantaneous winds of the tornado that are over 200 meters per second. I mean, getting close to Mach 1 almost. So what's interesting is that it looks like we're getting to a point now where our models are at high enough resolution that we're going to be able to see suction vortices that last a fraction of a second going on within a tornado. Now, are those there physically? We'll see. And I know your question was about updrafts, but it all kind of comes back to the same thing. Another thing about updrafts is in tornadoes near the ground, the updrafts can be ridiculously strong, which makes sense as well when you look at how cars get lofted and tossed, very far distances. It's, that's not just from being rolling, which they do plenty of that, but stuff gets lofted, and there's got to be updrafts easily, in a tornado like what we've been simulating. Again, a couple 100 mile an hour updrafts, within a few hundred feet of the ground. I mean, within the tornado.
So take us back to Supercell 101 and storm structure for a second. I know we're kind of theater of the mind here because we're not really showing any of those cool animations, but I know you say the updraft is the driver, but take that and then expand on all the other precursors and elements of a supercell that are important.
Sure. I mean, look to the environment first. You know, we know the ingredients you want for this type of storm. You want abundant moisture. You want abundant atmospheric instability. You need a lot of wind shear, and how that wind shear is distributed. For tornadoes, you want a lot of it near the ground, for instance, but you got to have deep layers shear to support the mesocyclone. And then you need a triggering device, you know, and the atmosphere has plenty of those, you know, dry line, front, just, you know, convection, just heating. Differences, and this is another challenge. You know, you got, where's the storm going to start? If you don't know where it starts, you can't really trace where it's going. But so yeah, what makes supercells unique is the mesocyclone, the long-lasting rotating updraft. Supercells can last hours. You know, air mass thunderstorms, they don't. They last, you know, half an hour from, you know, they go up and they go down, and they leave a little cirrus in the background. That's about it. So, you know, you need those ingredients. But again, not all supercells produce tornadoes. And this has really been the thrust of a lot of the work in both field work in meteorology and in modeling work, is really what goes on with the tornado. So yeah, I mean, those are the ingredients. You know, again, I'm not big on this screen sharing just because I don't have anything up, but you can go online and look at a plan view of a supercell with the hook echo and the weak echo region, which is, you know, that's where the updraft is. In fact, it's basically lofting all the precipitation above where the radar is seeing. So you get this weak echo region, the forward flank and the rear flank and the cold pool. And one of the things that the cold pool is what really intrigues me, because the structure of the cold pool seems to play a very important role in the maintenance of this tornado in our simulation. There seems to be a certain kind of, you know, there's all sorts of interesting things going on in the cold pool. You have buoyancy gradients, which can create horizontal vorticity. And that's a pretty, you know, straightforward concept. If you have a dense fluid next to a lighter fluid, it's going to start to intrude, and there's going to be some vorticity generated. You can think of a little rotating head on a leading edge of, say, a gust front. So there's a lot of horizontal vorticity that's being organized and then being tilted very, very rapid, or very abruptly as it enters the tornado. We're finding structures. We identified a structure we call the streamwise vorticity current, which again is we've only identified this in the simulations. I'm not sure I hope it's out there in the real atmosphere. Otherwise, what's the point, right? But it hasn't been identified in the real atmosphere yet, as far as I know. And I say that because in meteorology, you've got two very important parallel tracks. You've got the theory and the modeling, and then you've got the observations. And if you only have one and you don't have the other, then you know, it's not quite settled as far as I'm concerned. Oftentimes, things will show up in the atmosphere, and then we're like, well, we better be able to generate it in the model. And then it's generated in the model, and okay, I believe that thing happened. Now, you can have something happen in a model, and you can have weird things happen in models because you can just get into la-la land with models. But until it's detected in the atmosphere, it's still something that, you know, needs to be found. So, you know, we're discovering these micro scale structures within the supercell itself that are involved with the cold pool, that are maybe, you know, a kilometer in diameter. And it's just really fascinating. Just to give you an idea, the simulation we published at 30 meters produced about 300 terabytes of data. So you have to go through that data. I mean, when you're going to actually answer scientific questions, you have to go through that data, and it's a lot of data to go through. And we're just beginning that process right now. But yeah, supercells are fascinating, and there can be quite dangerous. I'm not a storm chaser. I have a lot of respect actually for people who chase smart chasers, I guess you could say, whether it's a hobby or you're doing it for science. I don't like these guys who just kind of drive through the tornado. It seems to be a Darwin Award coming, but you know, whatever you want to do, I suppose. There was some guy, something a couple of weeks ago, or somebody was pretty foolish, but yeah. So supercells, yeah. And I think only about 20 to 25% produce tornadoes, and only a fraction of 1% produce EF5s and EF4s. So there's still a lot to be learned about really why those storms do that.
Now, this streamwise vorticity current that you talk about, is this separate from the inflow? And describe that in a little greater detail. Why?
Yeah,
it's so
sure.
important.
Sure. So in our simulation, on the forward flank of the storm, behind the cold pool, there's a structure that it looks kind of like the updraft is so strong that it's almost just peeling the forward flank gust front boundary and just sucking it upwards. So it's just taking something that looks like this and it's just tilting it upwards because it's so darn strong. So it's a sort of a helical flowing cold. It's behind the cold pool, so it's from air that's been cooled by evaporation of precipitation, melting, all the thermodynamic processes. So it's negatively buoyant, but the updraft doesn't care because it's just so strong. And it kind of, the leading edge of a gust front. Here's your visual aid right here. Leading edge of the gust front right here, and then you've got your monster updraft right here, and it's like I'm going up. So that where it takes the turn like that, you're now producing vertical vorticity, which is what you want for a tornado. But what's interesting is that this SVC does not interact. It doesn't seem to interact with the tornado. It likes to go up and back and around it. And it seems to me, and this is where I'm speculating because we haven't really dug down quantitatively, but I'm thinking that it's helping to drive the tornado indirectly by making the mesocyclone so intense. There's a pressure drop within the SVC that's probably contributing towards vertical accelerations because you can have gradients of pressure that are non-hydrostatic that can lead to very strong updrafts or downdrafts, or even horizontal winds as well. And I suspect that what the SVC is doing is it's somehow helping to intensify the low-level mesocyclone, which is helping to drive the tornado. But it's interesting. We haven't unpacked it all yet.
Now, when you mentioned that there are multiple vortices moving along this boundary, and that those are important in some way to the formation of the tornado or the maintenance of the tornado.
Yes, that's the other interesting thing we found in our simulations is that prior to tornado genesis and during tornado genesis and after tornado genesis, there are lots of mesocyclones. We'll just call them what Fujita would have called them. They're essentially little rotating whirls of air with a lot of vertical vorticity that are sort of scooting along the forward flank downdraft boundary towards the inflection point where the tornado is going to form. So there's this transport of vertical vorticity. It's just advection almost so there's vorticity that's been created. And this is one thing that I think is going. So you've got all this vorticity that's being created way far in the forward flank of the storm, and it's sort of coming towards the updraft, and the updraft, as it's so strong, is that you get a little tilting. All you need is a little tilting or something to get some vertical vorticity, and then it can get stretched. And it doesn't matter if it's anticyclonic or cyclonic. The updraft just stretches it. And when you look at the basic vortex stretching term in meteorology, if you just park an updraft over a vortex that's vertically, a cyclonic vortex, it should get stronger. If you park an anticyclonic vortex, it should get stronger. So in other words, it doesn't matter. It's just going to stretch it and make it go faster. But there's primarily cyclonic vortices, which you'd expect from a cyclonic tornado. So you have this effect, you have this a conglomeration of vortices coming together, mostly from the forward flank. We also have some vortices come along the rear flank, but that seems to happen after the tornado is well along its way. And one of the things that this simulation, and I've done these simulations in this environment several times, the leading theory for how tornadoes form or tornado genesis in our field is that there's downdrafts in the RFD that kick out a downdraft. You got some convergence near the ground. You spin up a vortex. That's your tornado genesis. That's sort of one of the main models of tornado genesis in our field. I'm not seeing that in the simulation. I'm seeing something completely different. I'm seeing the RFD. If you just look at the storm relative air in the RFD, the updraft, it's like there's not a lot of D in the RFD in some cases. This updraft is so darn strong. You see air coming from the forward flank coming around, which technically it's now in the rear flank, but it's really originating from the forward flank. So everything seems to be about the forward flank in this simulation. The SVC is along the forward flank. The mesocyclones are along the forward flank. And if you just follow the air, it's going, the air that is feeding the tornado and feeding the SVC and much of the updraft is coming from the cold pool. It's not coming from the warm side. Now, yes, in the aggregate sense, plenty of the air is positively buoyant ahead of the storm. But when you get to where the tornado is, a lot of the air that the updraft is slurping and blasting into the tropopause is coming from the cold pool, and it's really fascinating. We got to put all these pieces together. We've got the pieces, most of them. Now we just need to start doing numbers and telling a real story.
And it's real hard to see things in that forward flank. That's not a good place to be.
It's not a good place to be. And in fact, this is one of the things that has me thinking a lot. I think one of the reasons why I think we've spent so much time in the rear flank of storms is because it's a safer place to study tornadoes. If you're in the rear flank, chances are it's going away from you. Not too many tornadoes, just completely loop. No, some do. But usually if you're in the rear flank, you're where the tornado has been, or where, you're in the forward flank where this SVC thing is, you're basically standing almost right where it's coming towards. Not only that, a very obvious question is, well, can we use radar to detect the SVC? Can we use or maybe LiDAR or whatnot? Now, I think so, but it's a very three-dimensional structure. So we're used to looking at, having our radar scan like this and looking at our tornadoes, or maybe straight up and down like this. And you might need to do that kind of thing when you're looking at the SVC to capture it on its side. But it's such a three-dimensional feature. We may need to get even more creative in how we detect it in the field. I've been talking to a couple of folks who are interested in letting probes go, into the storm. I'm serious, and these guys are
we've seen before.
We won't mention the name of that movie, but anyway, yeah, it's just like a movie. And you know what, though? I mean, technology, miniaturization has gotten crazy, and these guys are actually onto something here. I don't know how we're going to do it. Like I said, I'm a computer guy mostly. I have ideas, but when it comes to field work, you need to talk to somebody who's been doing that kind of work. I have no idea the logistical challenges. Well, I know some of the logistical challenges, but I don't know if this probe idea is even viable. But how else do you sample the air? How do you get the thermodynamic stuff? I mean, we're using UAVs, these aircraft. Those are there's NSF grants that are paying for these little aircraft to fly into the storms, and that's a step. If we could miniaturize that and have a whole fleet of them, now you're talking. Yeah. And I think maybe that movie was prescient. Wow, those guys knew what they were talking about. But maybe that's where this will go. I don't know. Yeah,
Rick, you got a Toto and some Dorothy pods in your lobby, don't you, there at your office?
Yeah, we could maybe dust those off and throw them in the back of the truck and go see what we could do.
Get Helen Hunt and see what you could do with it.
That's right.
This is really fascinating stuff, and it really kind of reminds me. We just wrapped up our storm spotter training season. I know James and Brian have been doing some, and one of the things we really emphasize to people is how hard it is to make a tornado. I think that sometimes people are just under the assumption, well, if it's a supercell and it's got red and green in it and it's rotating, it's just a matter of time before a tornado forms. And we try to explain to people it's not easy in the first place to get a supercell to form, and to get the tornado to form is magic when it comes to all that airflow and moisture and temperatures. And people, it's a rare thing to see a tornado, and it's a rare thing for tornadoes to happen. And I think people out here especially may have the wrong idea that you're just, well, I'll just drive down the road, I'm sure to see one here in the next, if there's a storm, I'll see one. But it's so much more complex than that.
Well, and not just that, but I mean, the way the technology has gone crazy now, everyone with a cell phone, with radar scope or whatever, I mean, you can get positioned pretty easily. In the old days, I think the perception would have been more like the reality of that these things are pretty rare and hard to see. But now that, every time there's a storm, somebody's got their video up on YouTube. So there's that perception too. I think that there's so many more people out chasing storms, especially in Oklahoma and where there's population densities like in Oklahoma City as such. People go out and it's crazy. But you're absolutely right. It is not that easy to produce a tornado, or at least let's just say it's something above an EF3 or something. You can produce, spin ups that technically get into the EF0 region easier. But no, and as I said, I've ran the same simulation in the same environment with only a couple of knobs tweaked. Sometimes I get the EF5, sometimes I don't. And when I look at the differences between the simulations, I've only just done sort of a broad look at these. It's structure in the cold pool. Maybe those 3 little mesovortices didn't come in at the right time, or the storm was doing some cycling, and it is difficult to get this kind of storm. And in fact, like I said earlier, when I went back to recreate it, I couldn't, and I thought I was never going to get my storm back. I did all this work, and then I can't do it. I can't reproduce my results. And again, getting off on a slight tangent, when they update the compilers and the operating system on the supercomputer, I rerun my simulation and get a different result. And that's because of optimization. Now that is awful. If you think about it, I cannot go back and recreate the simulation because they changed the compiler or something. and the reason for that is optimizations. You want your job to run relatively fast, so there's some optimizations you can pass to the compiler. So like you say, you can be a little fast and loose with the least significant digits of your floating point stuff, but the way they do it changes over time. So yeah, somebody should write a paper, a sensitivity study of compiler flags to tornadogenesis in a supercell model, because in reality, everything matters. It's crazy. It really is. Ensembles. We need ensembles.
That's it. That's the Dustin Hoffman advice of the
plastic ensembles. Because ensembles, you want that. You want that variability. You're betting on that variability. You're putting the variability in the simulation so that you get this full spread of possibility if you do it right.
Well, I was just happy to read that you're still using programs that have Fortran in them. That made me really happy.
Well, I'll tell you what, and this is no joke. Fortran is the language that's used most on these supercomputers. I mean, I laugh at it too. I'm not old enough to have done punch cards, but Fortran is kind of a language. It's not the most fun language to program. It's got a lot of things I don't like about it. But on the other hand, especially with Fortran 95, 2003, the more later variants, it really is a number crunching machine. It's a number crunching language, and the things that you want to do on a supercomputer are pretty easy to do in Fortran, generally speaking. And I've written enough C code in my life that I've had enough pointers dangling off into la la land that I don't really mind the fact that I don't have to worry about that in Fortran. The memory protection stuff, I usually don't. It doesn't bite me in the butt. But yes, it's Fortran is. I mean, Wharf models Fortran. Our operational models are pretty much all Fortran. In the weather service, I mean, it really is a good language for computing, for weather models, and also engineers use Fortran. Other than that, pretty much every university pretty much wants to stop teaching it because nobody in computer science really wants to teach Fortran anymore. It's an ancient language, but I'm glad we still have it because it does the trick.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Mark, I know you're champing at the bit over there as our other resident IT expert here.
Well, actually, I did have a couple questions that, oddly enough, are computer related, and the first we'll get to ensembles since you brought them up so much. I know in time I've spent with tropical cyclone forecasting, and certainly the resolution's a whole different scale there. Most of the time we're looking at storms that are much bigger than tornadoes, and I know working with the ECMWF, even 51 ensembles can create quite a different range of outcomes. I'm curious if you've looked at the ensemble setups and to give you an effective spread of the real risk of a tornado, or is that just, I know you said you've done some tweaking here and there, but do you have any sense of what it would take to get a really good spread on a tornado prediction scenario?
That's a great question, and no, I haven't. And when I say I've done ensembles, in other words, I've done them almost by mistake. I'm just like tweaking knobs to see what happens. No, that is, but how you set up your ensembles is very important. You want to make sure you get the right variability, the right initial conditions just right to get the spread, to get the realization of the final outcome to be what you want. You don't want, if you get an ensemble and you get just completely a spread all over the place, that happens in real life with our operational models now. We're doing ensembles now. I think we should be pushing them harder and running them at higher resolution. But in that case, then you just have a very difficult prediction to make, and it's like, well, we don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes you get the nice bifurcation where you have half the results going this way, half the results going that way, and that must make you go crazy if you're forecasting, right? It's going to be the big one or it's going to be a bust, and sometimes it lines up. But no, I am, my sort of speciality, as it were, is this really ridiculously high resolution stuff with and just. I say I don't like deterministic simulations, but I do like one or two, like of the ones I'm studying, just because there's so much interesting data in these simulations. One of my deterministic simulations is just one potential supercell out of an infinite number of supercells, right? You sort of think of it that way. We can still learn something. We can learn about the processes that went in this one storm. But if you want to predict, and if you really want to understand something more fully, you really have to run this sensitivity to initial conditions thing is just dealt head on with ensembles. You don't just cross your fingers and hope you'll get the result you want. You actually get a whole bunch of results. But it's always going to cost more to run ensembles than a single run. I mean, that's just right? Sure. If you're going to run at that resolution. But so, yeah, there's people who are more adept at these techniques to set up the ensembles than but this is something that I will probably end up learning more about as I get beyond the single just El Reno. I'm going to start to do other storms, other environments, but then I want to actually set up ensembles. We could do 100-meter ensembles easily. And that is a direction I am interested in pursuing.
Okay, my other question was more along the, I guess, teaching with computers perspective. I had the pleasure of teaching a synoptic meteorology course this semester at Georgia Tech, and I can't recall how many times I would have loved to have been able to put some goggles on them and get, AR, VR type stuff, especially with 3D things like this. Your animations and your simulations have been great. Have you dabbled into the AR, VR world with this stuff yet?
Well, it is absolutely trivial to make stereo pairs so you can do 3D. So, you can put the goggles on and then you can see the depth. I've done that. I had a geo wall for a while when I was at Central Michigan University. I didn't use it very much, but proof of concept, it works fine. I don't have stereo vision. My eyes are messed up a little bit, but I don't care. Yes, the answer is yes. Okay. In fact, I just put in an NSF grant with some collaborators who are interested in doing just that, creating the 3-dimensional stuff. So my movies now are just, I render 1 frame per time. If you want to do 3D stuff, at least the simplest way is that you basically have the camera be over here and a camera over here. So you get that the perspective, the depth thing. And then you have to feed it into a system that can somehow display it to your eyes. We know we have the polarized lenses, you've got the shutter lenses, you've got those awful red-green things that nobody really likes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So absolutely, there's to get that real 3D, the real 3D that you're asking about. It's easy to do, actually. All I would have to do is render twice as many frames and then somehow get them into a system that can recreate the full 3-dimensional experience.
Fair enough.
Cool stuff. So Dr. Orff, I had a couple of other things on the structure that struck me as I was looking at some of your simulations. Number one, we had a chaser last week that was in an incipient tornado and saw atomized rainfall. Is that what you talk about when you're referring to centrifuging of precipitation out of the tornado itself, or is that a different thing?
No, so you say atomized, so it was just fine mist, is what you're saying? Okay, so in the center, fine mist. All right, when you look at a tornado on radar, you look at some of Josh Werman's work and stuff, when he gets really close, you typically see an eye, right? You typically, if it's not got a bunch of debris in the center, it hasn't just destroyed a bunch of stuff, you typically see an eye because the raindrops are they're heavier than the air. The air will just follow the forces that we know in the Navier-Stokes, but when you have something rotating very rapidly, it's going to be centrifuged outwards. And our model code doesn't have that physical process built in. Rain can only fall downwards by gravity or get evected sideways, but it can't get centrifuged. There's no concept of the idea of rain going like this and then getting drawn outward. So our tornado fills with rain, which is not the way real tornadoes work, I think. I mean, it looks almost kind of comical sometimes because our tornado does have a very intense downdraft in the center of it, which is what we've seen this in chamber models. I'm not sure we've actually measured this in nature. It's pretty hard to do, but like a hurricane, in fact, there's a big downdraft, a little downdraft in the center of a multiple vortex tornado or a 2-celled tornado. So if you think about it, you've got rain up in the cloud and you got this tornado kicking in. All you have to do is get some rain inside that downdraft that just doesn't get scooted off to the side too much and get drawn back up. So eventually, one of my animations, you can just see it slowly coming down to the ground, and it looks cool, but it's not physically correct. But I also don't think it's probably hurting much because the tornadoes. This strength tornado is high enough that it doesn't. If the rain gets centrifuged, fine. If it doesn't, fine. I don't care. I'm a monster tornado. It's not like this isn't going to really mess up our results, but it drives me nuts because when the tornado really gets to the multiple vortex stage towards the end and the cloud lifts, you just see this like column of rain that shouldn't be there. It kind of bugs me. So this is something that there's a couple of different techniques, I think, that we could follow here, but there's no real easy, obvious, proper way to fix this as far as I know. I need to talk to some microphysics experts because I really think it just needs to be something put into our microphysics code, and I think they're the guys to do that. But this is there's so many layers of things to do, but that's on my list. Believe me, I want to see that get out. But I am interested in what you said about atomized rain. So you're saying that the raindrops essentially got so bashed up in there that they became small. Now, if that's the case, they wouldn't be so prone to being centrifuged because their mass is less. They would still centrifuge, but maybe not. The air would push back a little more. But that's an interesting thing to hear. Of rain getting atomized, yes, as you say.
Now, another observation that we had on the Tuscaloosa to Birmingham tornado, I know you've looked at that tornado, but some people that were, in the path of the tornado remarked to me that they saw fog form almost instantaneously in the few minutes before the tornado arrived. And that struck them as really funny because it was still, of course, really warm. Is that the ghost train that you talk about in your simulations?
It could be. Now, I must say the only reason that I put ghost train in there is because I was talking to a guy beforehand, and I know this. I know some chaser slang, and I think the ghost train, I forget who coined the term, is what you see in, at least in my simulation, this the air gets sort of in the forward flank of the storm, it falls, but that inflow gets carried by the inflow, and it just, the ghost train goes to the tornado or goes to the updraft. So you see this precipitation that is advected horizontally very, very fast. It's not a lot of rain, but there's enough you can see it in these. So we see that in our simulation, and I don't know if it's an important, if it's important or not, but it's amazing that we even get these things even close to being right when you look at how microphysics really represents rain and hail. We don't have rain and hail in our models. We have mixing ratios, which are mass of rain divided by the mass of the air, and that's one number in a volume 30 meters on a side. So it's the fact that we can even get this stuff to look as good as it does blows my mind. It really does. There's just so many different ways to go with this research. But I'm having fun. I guess I'll just leave it at that. You
obviously are. That's the fun part. Now, talk about the height of the tornado. That's always interesting to me. And I know there's a lot of research. We're reviewing papers right now for the NWA, and there are a couple of papers already in there for the annual meeting in California about the height of the correlation coefficient minimum and how that relates to intensity of the tornado. Talk about that for a minute. How high does the tornado go up, and is that an important thing for us to be looking at?
Right. Well, I'll talk about my simulation. I'm not as up on the correlation coefficient, how it would reflect these things, but you can see in the vorticity field traces of a tornado easily 16 kilometers. So you're up at the tropopause and you're seeing, and this is why I mentioned the overshooting top, because I'm thinking if the simulation is showing evidence of the tornado that high, maybe there's a signature we can latch onto with satellite data. But yeah, the tornado does extend. And when I say the tornado, I mean this low pressure thing with rotating air around it. You can see a signature of it well up in, 10, well above 10 kilometers. Now, so, and people have sort of hypothesized, earlier simulation work with that I like what I'm doing with trying to simulate the supercell and the tornado have it naturally. Some of these previously published works have seen these sort of shallow, very short-lived, intense tornadoes that maybe only extend a few kilometers into the atmosphere. And those just don't seem too physically right to me. Maybe if they last a short time, okay, but I'm not ready to make any kind of statement about all tornadoes. I want to be very clear about that. I've been studying this one environment for a couple of years now, and I know that it's just one case, but absolutely the tornado extends up all the way up. The pressure drop is strongest near the ground. So if you're looking for a pressure signal, it's strongest near the ground, say in the boundary layer. As you go up, the pressure signal gets less and less, but you still see the spin. And again, the signature of a tornado, I can easily trace it up that high. No, sir?
Yeah. I was asking Rick if he had any more questions.
Oh, okay.
There.
I don't know if I
have like 100 more.
Hey, let me ask one here.
At some points, James cuts me off.
So Dr. Orff, so let's get down to us grunts. We're down here in the trenches, and you're looking at radar, and you've got a sounding that might be 5, 6, 7 hours old, and you got the mesoscale models, and you see. This is before you see a debris signature on, dual pole, and you begin to see evidence of a supercell, and you start to see the storm rotating. What advice would you give somebody working a warning desk at a weather service office on when to hit the trigger and when to stay off the trigger for a tornado warning?
Oh, gosh. I'm not going to touch. Well, again, look, what I'm doing is pure research. I don't have, if my simulation gets screwed up, nobody dies, nobody gets hurt. I swear a little bit. That's okay. I lose some computer time, whatever. I know you guys do something that is so much incredibly harder in a sense than I do. And what I'm doing is hard, I'll say, but it's like, I don't want to make any statements because as you know, the research to operations train, it goes a lot slower than the ghost train, right? It takes a long time for stuff that occurs in the pure research world to filter its way into operations. And there's good reasons for that. So when you talk about 5-hour-old soundings and you just start to see a nice mezzo on the radar and all that stuff, I have nothing. I have nothing for you because seriously, I don't want to start giving people ideas like, well, look for those little mesovortices along the forward flank. You're probably not going to catch those in WSR-88D radars anyway. You'd be lucky to capture them with research radars. So in all seriousness, the scale of these simulations is so much higher than what you see on radar. I can't communicate the things that I'm seeing into an operational space because you guys just don't have the sampling capability to even see what I'm seeing. If you're at the desk and you're watching data come in every 5 minutes in the next radar scanner or whatnot. So I honestly, in all seriousness, I don't have any inside information for you. I'm still just trying to figure out this one simulation and trying to, push our understanding just of supercells forward an incremental amount so that we can, eventually get better at this.
And where do you go in the future? Are you going to take more case studies with this data, like maybe in a different part of the world? Obviously, selfishly, we're in Dixie Alley down here.
Yep.
I mean, where do you go in this research from here?
Yep, I'm going to be trying. Okay, I've already tried El Reno 2, May 31st. So to answer your question, yes, one of our research objectives is to do the same thing we've done with 24 May 2011. We're going to try to do Tuscaloosa's on our list, Greensburg, Kansas, Joplin, Missouri, El Reno 2, May 31st, and maybe a couple more cases. So I'm agnostic when it comes to cases. I just want to get a good spread of different cases. And I want to start with the high-end storms because they're the ones that have the biggest impact. But I won't be satisfied until I'm also simulating run-of-the-mill tornadoes, the more common ones. But yes, the two big directions we're going is, first of all, we published one paper on this storm, and it's mostly descriptive. We wanted to get very quantitative and really drill down, probably a few papers in Monthly Weather Review or whatnot. Then we're also going to, at the same time, be working on other cases. Like you said, Tuscaloosa, the other El Reno, Greensburg, other EF5s, EF5s and EF4s. Does this SVC thing show up in these other simulations? I don't know. Maybe we'll find something new. We have no idea. But yeah, that is the direction. You've pretty much just explained it.
Okay,
more cases.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Just send Ryan into the forward flank and let him find that this FCC.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. Let me see. Aubrey was here a second ago, but we got to take a quick break here. So let's roll. And by the way, Professor Peters is off this week, so we've got the astronomy report from Tony Rice. We'll come back, and if Aubrey is available, a 5-hour email segment. We'll do weather roundup, picks of the week, and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along. Wait a minute. Now,
Marty Robbins, what is this?
No, that was Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash.
Oh, whatever.
This is the file that Tony Rice sent down, and I've never heard it start like that. I'm almost afraid to roll this, but let's roll it.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice.
What is this? This is awesome. Wow. All right. So he's replaced his theme music with Johnny Cash. I'm cool. Here we go.
I'm okay with that.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
We're just a little more than 4 months out from the August 21st total solar eclipse, which will make its way across the continental United States. I'm sure you know what a total eclipse is and how it differs from a partial one. But what about an annular eclipse? No, it doesn't mean that it happens once a year either. An annular solar eclipse is like a total solar eclipse in that the center of the moon passes across the center of the sun from our vantage point here on Earth. But An annular eclipse occurs when the moon is at a point in its elliptical orbit which has taken it away from the Earth, making the moon appear smaller. So small, in fact, that the moon doesn't quite cover the sun. During an annular eclipse, the tip of the umbra, or that darkest part of the moon's shadow, doesn't quite reach the Earth. It's likely cast up somewhere in the upper atmosphere. But for those standing in that dimmer shadow which does make it to their surface, they'll see the annulus, or ring of fire, as the sun shows around the edges of the moon. We last saw an annular eclipse back in February. If you do find yourself sometime in the future in a part of the world where an annular eclipse is visible, remember, you still are looking directly at the sun, if just a little bit of it, and you need to have protection to avoid eye injury. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been waiting for it, and it's back. It's time to read some email.
Letters. We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
Yeah, I think I only have one email to read, James, tonight, so this is not going to take long at all.
They all expired.
So I'm going to move, and I'm going to put that on, because I don't have anywhere to put my iPad. So let's see, there's my email. Oh, let's see. Unfortunately, sorry about the noise behind me. They're running through the show. Unfortunately, we lost a TV meteorologist in Maine earlier this week. Tom Johnson from WCSH in Portland was found a few days after he was missing. So definitely our thoughts and prayers go out to him, his family, his friends, and definitely his coworkers. Never an easy thing. Let's see, the Dallas Sirens from the other night. What was that? Was that Saturday night or Sunday night?
I don't know, but it stirred up a big
hacked.
fuss. I want to say it was Saturday night.
Saturday night, yeah.
Yep, and they were apparently hacked for the emergency sirens. So John W. sent in that great article from the Dallas News.
I think it was Dr. Orff.
Radicals at Wisconsin.
That's right.
These computer guys, you just don't know what they're going to do.
I got bored.
Yeah.
I got bored.
Next email is from Ben Baker, and I don't know if you guys talked about this while I was out. Greetings. Been a heavy podcast listener for the last year. Earlier this year, there was the rich discussion on the LRC cycle. I recall that should have hit in late February. I also thought someone took the assignment to follow up to see if that cycle hit. Can you provide an update?
You've come to the right place, Aubrey.
No, we know nothing about it.
And that's what Mark's here for tonight. So this is from, let's see, James Gilbert. It was this was actually way back at the end of, is that been that long since I've been on? The March 8th, the Rochester Airport clocked an 81-mile-an-hour wind gust. If we all can remember that far back, I know we're all getting old and our memories aren't the same. Just joking. But it was the second highest behind the 1998 derecho. So, and of course, then there was the major windstorm on March 1st. That year. And also an email I should have read a long time ago from Robert Keel. Hey, WeatherBrains, it's Thursday. Well, this is back in March. I would like to introduce you guys to Mrs. Robert J. Keel. Kevin met her before at a weather festival in Norman. Her name is Sharon. She's a second grade teacher at Central Elementary in Moore, and they got married. The weather was chilly, but the rain managed to hold off. So they are considering it a lucky wedding day. And he said apparently she's going to be watching and listening to the show now. And now they'll have the inside joke, and now she'll know what show title means.
Meteorologistonly.com.
Yeah.
So I think that's all I had. A lot of the other ones were just conversations we were having with some potential guests and things like that. So that's all I have.
Let me read one, Aubrey. This is the one about I was wondering if you ever thought about this scenario. If one didn't have access to the internet, what tools would you use to anticipate the weather? So you can't go on a browser. You can't pop up on a phone. No internet.
Well, we have a lot of Mennonites in our area. And when I was talking to them, because I wanted to do a story on it, how they get their weather information without being so connected to technology, and they wouldn't talk on camera, of course. We have one lady that we talked to for some resources who's very chatty, and she said that they use the weather clues in the sky, and they also rely on neighbor reports and other people that have kind of talked and heard some things, but they kind of do it the old-fashioned way, and they rely on the signs of nature.
So they're looking for cloud types then.
Yep, they're looking for cloud types,
Folklore.
pressure changes, probably animal behavior.
Yeah, and again, the old Cirrus nearest stratus coming at us, but you can have,
Right.
that's hard. I'll be the first to say I've gotten used to having data. I mean, I've got like 8 screens in front of me here. In the scenario they're throwing out, let's say you're way out in the Gulf of Mexico in a sailboat, or you're camping deep in some wooded area where there's no internet access and there's no cell service, and you got to have access to some data. And one of the things that I have done for years, I'm a ham radio guy. And, people might laugh at ham radio operators, but let me tell you what, when your fancy phone stops working, they don't laugh at us anymore. And the government has a facsimile service where you can receive weather charts. And I want to say the frequencies, it's 4270 kilohertz, I think 6500, 10500, 13500 kilohertz, but with a radio receiver, an HF radio receiver, these are the HF bands, and with some type of simple printer, you can print those out. But the problem is, if you're camping out in the woods, there's a good chance you're not going to have a printer with you. So, but obviously a barometer, look for a rapid pressure fall. That's not that hard to take with you.
Well, if you've got an HT, I'm a ham radio operator too. If you've got an HT, you got the weather, you've got the Harvey, the guy who reads the what is it, 162.45 megahertz, the FM broadcast,
weather radio
there. Yeah. So, but if you're going to be able to, you're absolutely right about ham radio, by the way. It's the first stuff that hits the road. If the cell towers are down, et cetera, let's hear it for the fact that we got people out there who want to actually get on the radio and convey information. But yeah, I would say, I just wanted to jump in there and say, every single HT, a 2-meter radio, you get your license, has a weather radio built right in it. So you could get information that way.
Yeah, yeah. And weather radio penetration is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And again, and handy talkie, 2 meters and 220 and 440, those are the prime bands. But even, let's say that you're in the middle of the ocean, you can set up a portable HF radio. Those are not that expensive. Now, you have to have a license. That's the one thing about it. You have to be licensed to do this. And a little dipole, you can do wonders on 15 meters and 20 meters and 40 meters. It doesn't take a lot. The old QRP, the low power stuff. But yeah, barometer, watching the sky, it's not easy. I'd be the first to say I would not want to do that. So, Bill, you got any thoughts?
No, I think that I've got a tremendous collection of weather folklore, and a lot of it, I've spent a number of years looking at what made sense meteorologically, and some of it, is in, has a real basis. And so if you're paying attention to the sky and checking the wind direction and, have knowledge of all that sort of thing, a lot of times you can just pop outside and, you can have all of your meteorological thoughts you've been working on all day inside, immediately confirmed to you just by stepping outside.
Yeah. And I'll say this too. I mean, if you're worried about storms, I want to know the pressure and I want to know the dew point. I mean, in my body, I think my body has a 65-degree dew point alarm. I can tell you if there's a 65-degree dew point out here. It's just maybe the fact that I'm old, but
tornado weather.
Yeah, typically.
No, I think you can. I think you can feel it.
Yeah, and what you need to do is just, when it starts to feel very sultry and humid, and go look at the dew point when you do have internet access and kind of see how your body feels. And when the dew point is 65 and the prime of the tornado season where we are down here, that in April and March and early May, now it's always 65 in summer where we are. We're in maritime tropical air all summer, but in the spring and the cool season, when you see a 65-degree dew point, that is a screaming red flag for me.
Yeah, JB wouldn't be caught without his sling psychrometer.
Psychrometer, yeah, man, that thing. No telling how many people he's killed with that thing over the years. All right, so let's see here. Let's go to the old weather roundup. What do you say? Because it's that time.
When the weather call is red, warmer weather is ahead. when the weather ball is white. Colder weather is in sight when the weather ball is green. No change in the weather is foreseen when colors blink by night or day. Precipitation's on the way.
So this is April 10th, 2017, and we'll kind of do a weather roundup. Let's see, Dr. Orff, you're up in Wisconsin. By the way, do you know Scott Lindstrom up there by any chance?
Yeah, sure do.
Yeah, I heard him speak on Go 16, and he was just remarkably good.
Yeah, he is.
He is really good with Go 16. And but anyway, what's happening? You had some thunder up there tonight. It looked like Chicago got hammered for a while.
We had a little convection, and we actually had a little weather discussion about this, kind of trying to figure out what was going to go on. You talking about that dew point? We had dew points in the 50s here in southern Wisconsin. So today we had some storms blow through from Iowa. Here we got about maybe 1/10 of an inch of rain, a couple of rumbles of thunder. Chicago, I saw they warned on a storm before they even put out a watch box. But it pretty much fast-moving storms, no rotation. I don't think I saw any tornado reports, certainly not in Wisconsin, and northern Illinois looked mostly like hail. But we had a little bit of excitement here. Spring's here, and you're starting to get into the convective season, in southern Wisconsin.
And winter weather advisories in northern Wisconsin, huh?
Yep, that's right. You had it's right. We had snow up north, and down here it felt like spring. I wore shorts today, which is a big, it's getting to that time of the year where it's not that unreasonable. But we had we had a week in February where it was hit 65 or something, which was crazy. But today was just a nice sort of slightly humid, a little rainy, little roll of thunder here and there, but nothing too exciting here in southern Wisconsin.
All right. So Aubrey, apparently you're warm and dry, huh?
Very warm, very dry. Yeah, limited rain, and it looks like we're going to kind of that jet stream's going to stay north of us for some time. So, like you said, the Death Ridge setting up extremely early in the season for it, which is super interesting. But yeah, warm, dry, pleasant temperatures. But hopefully we don't get that too late of a frost. That's the concern, especially with the agriculture in our area. The peach crops have already been damaged quite a bit from the warm February. Apples are okay, and I talked to some vineyard owners today, and they said they think that their grapes so far are doing pretty good.
All right, Rick, you're doing okay with rain out there, but things are quiet tonight. Looks like the storms are east and south of you.
Yeah, quiet tonight. We had some storms in far southeast Oklahoma this afternoon. We had a threat of storms yesterday, but it was one of those, seems early in the season for one of these cap days where, it was just all or nothing. Yep. And it was, the sounding was there. If we'd have gotten a storm yesterday, somebody would have been calling their car insurance rep today, probably for hail. But luckily it didn't happen. And these past few systems that have come through, as warm as the Gulf is, we really haven't had, what we've really been missing is that really rich low-level moisture. You're talking about the 65 dew points. Yep. Luckily, we haven't had that up here. Eventually, those things are going to meet up, and we're going to get busy. But we're looking forward to just some non-severe rain and thunderstorms Wednesday and Thursday of this week, and we're going to take every drop that we can get.
Yep. Mark, what's going on in your world?
Not much. We're in that kind of dry Death Ridge pattern as well. Even the storms last week, we got a little bit of wedge action that came in and killed off our instability. So we didn't get hammered as bad as some of the folks to the west of us, but we seem to be looking at, a week to 10 days coming forward with not a whole lot going on.
Yep. Wedge action means something totally different out here. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, I had to translate in my mind there, Rick.
Yeah, wedge action means different things to different people. But we had this day last Wednesday here, and it was just a very bizarre day. We had that was the day where SPC put out a high risk for parts of Georgia and South Carolina, and a moderate risk into my state, which is Alabama. And there was just this big perception that there was a bad forecast. I thought it was pretty darn good. We forecast storms in the morning with potential for hail and strong winds, kind of a midday lull, and then supercells in the afternoon. And within those supercells, there could be a few tornadoes and maybe even a strong, violent type long track tornado. And that's what happened. We had morning storms with hail and strong winds. We had a midday lull. We had supercells in the afternoon. The only thing that didn't happen, we didn't have a strong, violent tornado. And maybe that's what people are just hearing, and they don't hear anything else. But, all these haters, just brutal. So, and people know if you're a long time listener to this show, the way I do deal with the haters. I pick just one choice troll or hater or know-it-all, and I release it to the world. And I will let the world.
Lily Mae
Lily Mae was the choice this time after a Facebook message. And
have y'all made up yet, or is she still after you?
She got kind of you only saw the tame stuff. I saw the really heavy stuff, and this is a family show.
Blur out a lot of words on Twitter.
Yeah, I will not put the serious stuff on there, but what and I think partly what's going on here is society degenerates and becomes self-centered. If it doesn't happen at your house, then it doesn't happen at all. Nothing else matters. If my neighbor 5 miles down the road loses a windshield because of hail and has part of their roof blown off, it doesn't matter because it didn't happen to me. And that's where we are. And people, it is just a very bizarre time in our culture. And the supercell storms we had were not in a big population center, and they were in rural areas. And if it doesn't happen in a big city, then it just doesn't happen. And I don't understand that, but it is what it is. So I'm glad we are in a quiet pattern down here. But let's move on here to picks of the week. This is where we go around the horn. Everybody shares something that is weather related. This can be a website, hardware, software, weather instruments, anything. So Bill Murray, I'm going to start with you. What's your pick of the week?
Yeah, James, today is the anniversary of the Red River tornado outbreak, and my pick is actually something that's featured in Rick's pick tonight, but that's an amateur operator who basically propped up a microphone and a cassette recorder that day and recorded all the amateur radio traffic in the Wichita Falls spotter network as that tornado was going into town there, and that's just chilling to me to hear that. It's kind of scratchy, rough audio quality, but boy, there's some real chilling sounds in that broadcast.
Right. And let me say, Mark, we're going to give you all the time in the world here. I'm getting in all the stuff I've got to do. The show is going to belong to you.
Poor Mark.
Yeah.
Because I've got to go do television.
Juggling circus. I can't wait.
So. Yeah. So we're going to give you 4 hours here. Mine, it's I think this is great. I didn't know this was out there. And again, for us grunts, the guys down here in the trenches doing the operational stuff, any information we can have to help us make better decisions is a good thing. And I found this severe weather forecasting tip sheet from the WFO in Louisville up there in Kentucky. And that's John Gordon's domain. And it is just excellent. It's a PDF. And that's the kind of thing where you just want to keep handy. You want to keep it in the office and be able to look at that. It's got some really, really good information. Whoever put that thing together, they have been on the warning desk before. They have made some hard decisions. So, and all these links will be up on the website, weatherbrains.com. Brian is off this week, but producer JP is going to put it together. So, Bill, I'm going to step across the hall and do some news. So I will let you do the other picks of the week and let Mark have his time.
Outstanding. Thank you, James. So Aubrey, have we had your pick of the week yet?
No, mine is helicitydesigns.com. I believe they're new. It is the site for all apparel weather. They have a bunch of t-shirts. Mine is on order. It has "Oh Hail No" on the front. There is a Thunder Snow one. There is a Respect the Polygon one for James. There's also "I Make It Rain," "Storms Never Sleep," "Are You Serious?" and "High Dew Points Make Me Moist." It's just a sampling. And they actually—
That sounds like a show title.
It's hilarious. And
yeah, we've got a shortage of show titles tonight.
Well, they do discounts on SPC wrist days.
Oh, wow. There you go. So is it like a 30% discount for a high risk or
like
what?
I think it's a 10% discount for high risk. But in between supercells, order your shirt.
Those shirts are really cool looking, though. I saw them.
Yeah, they're very nice.
Those represent. So that's really cool. So thank you, Aubrey. That's really cool. All right, Dr. Orff, time for your pick of the week.
Well, I hadn't really prepared, but I will say along the lines of what you're saying, I'd say the graphical processing unit, the GPU. I'm not sure who actually made the first one with his NVIDIA or whatnot, but we're seeing a real shift in our computing technology. It's going from central processing units to graphical processing units. We're going to be running weather models on graphics cards, basically. And this is a big new direction in high performance computing. And I think you're going to be able to do things hopefully along the lines of what I'm talking about with Blue Waters. Maybe in 10 years or so, you'll be able to buy a machine that can do the same kind of work. So let's hear it for GPUs.
That's outstanding. Well, thank you for being with us tonight. Fascinating
Thanks for having
material, and like you said, your YouTube videos are just incredible. Just go watch those.
Go check them out. They tell a lot more than I can explain.
Well, you did an awfully good job in the theater of the mind tonight, so we
Thanks a lot.
appreciate that very much. So, Mark, what have you? Well, I'm gonna come back to you, Mark. I'm gonna ask Rick real quick. Rick, I've already kind of hinted at what your pick of the week is, but you can expound.
Okay, audio's cutting in and out here for me, but yeah, my pick of the week is tied very closely with yours. This is April 10th and the anniversary of Terrible Tuesday, it's called, and there's a video put together back in the early 80s called Terrible Tuesday. And like you said, it goes back and relives the event and talks to victims and survivors and talks about the overpass issue. That's really one of the first cases where we had people taking cover under overpasses. Majority of the deaths were happening when people trying to run away from the tornado in a car. Lots of things that are in this video and that happened on the April 10th, 79 event that are still happening today and that are still issues today. Really cool to hear. There's familiar voices on the tape that's your pick of the week and on this video that are just awesome. I still work with some of these people, and some of the ham radio operators that are featured on both of our picks are still active in the community and doing work to help people. So just a kind of a blast from the past, watching that video and seeing some of the old satellite and the old radar technology. And so anyway, that's mine.
Yeah, absolutely an incredible day. So many years ago today, but thank you for that, Rick. That's awesome. So I thought I was going to add something else there, but I can't remember what it was. So Mark, we finally get around to what we set out to do last week.
You mean my pick of the week then?
Yeah, that too. So give us your pick of the week, and then let's talk about your long-awaited verification statistics.
Sure, I'll be glad to do that. So given that James brought up the human barometer thing, I thought I'd just put out something different. I did a podcast episode actually on this topic a while back, and I came across something that was done in the UK called Cloudy with a Chance of Pain. And it's a project where they're crowdsourcing how you feel under different weather conditions. And it's been a difficult topic of study that a lot of people have tried to tackle, but they're trying to crowdsource how people feel in different conditions to determine how strong the links really are. So Cloudy with a Chance of Pain.com, actually.
So folklore verification.
Yep.
All right. So now you did some validation of some long range forecasts from some folks that have been on the show, and also for AccuWeather and maybe some other people. So talk about some of your interesting findings.
Sure. I'd be glad to do that. Let me first say that, and as I kind of shared with you guys via email in the past, this is my sampling, right? So I sat here and I looked at Atlanta. Gary Lezak was on your show end of December-ish, and it really kind of prompted me to do this. So I didn't do any sort of nationwide look at anything, and it really should be done. I mean, if you really want to do verification statistics, you should do them over long periods of time, and you should do a very broad sample spatially as well. So that's not what I did. Okay, in all fairness, but what I did is I pulled their forecast. So I pulled the LRC 12-week forecast, and I also pulled the AccuWeather 90-day forecast on December 27th of this past year, and went to look and see how they might perform over my 12-week window and 90-day window for this past winter. And really just, ran it against the simple National Weather Service daily climatology reports. And, there were two pieces to that. So the LRC forecast is out there. They give you a weekly temperature average, and then they give you some write-up about different days in that week that, when you might expect precipitation and those sort of things. And then the AccuWeather is more of a day-to-day, right? So they give you a high and a low, and some indication, again, in words, whether, it's going to be a cloudy day or a sunny day, or might you see some ice or rain or whatever. And the end results didn't come out very positively for either one of the forecasts. Now, I had to put out some thresholds that, different people are going to have different thresholds, but in short, what I used for the AccuWeather forecast, so given that it was like a daily forecast that a lot of on-air meteorologists do, I used a threshold of less than 5. Okay, so with rounding and stuff, it would have just been for 4 or less of an error, 4 degrees or less. It was a good forecast. From 5 until 9, it was a not bad forecast. And then for 10 or more degree error in a given day, it was a bad forecast. And then with the weather 2020, I looked at it a little differently. I wasn't quite as lenient since it was a weekly average. If it was 3 degrees or less of error, it was good. Then 3 to 7, it was not bad, and above 7, it was not good. And again, just looking at Atlanta, both of those on average for this winter had a 60% bad forecast performance. So not exactly the numbers that were thrown out there when Gary was on talking about his model, and or the AccuWeather person when he was on a little earlier and you guys had asked him about that. Now, as I said in my communication with you guys, I'd love to think that Gary's onto something with his 60-day cycle, but all this still proves that we're a long way from prime time with these sub-seasonal to seasonal forecasts.
Well, outstanding. Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Mark. Aubrey, any comments or questions for Mark about this verification? Are you already in the show, probably? Aubrey,
she's muted. Yeah,
we are like 30 seconds to show, so
okay, well, you got 30
I'll
seconds.
reserve it for you guys.
Well, Dr. Orff, what's your thought on things like the CFS? We're really concerned about going back into a drought here, and it paints a really negative picture for Alabama for the rest of the spring and summer into the fall, and it really concerns us here. So, how much weight should we be putting in those, monthly forecasts from the CFS?
Well, it's a tough one because historically, so you found there's some bad forecasts being made. I don't know what choice do we have at this point? These types of forecasts are difficult. Let's face it. I would pay attention to them, but do you act upon them? I don't know. What you'd like to know ahead in advance if you're going to have this kind of event. You can plan ahead. Maybe there's ways you can already start to cut down on water usage or whatnot. But I don't know. It's sort of outside of my realm of modeling. That kind of modeling, you sort of, it's similar in that you're going out to the future. Your simulation is out in the la-la land pretty fast, but if you do enough of them, you might get a better picture of the global patterns that are going to lead to drought and things like that. But like I said, can we do better? We can do better, but right now it's all we've got. So I'd pay attention to it, but with all the caveats that were mentioned, because this isn't magic. Things can go wrong, and they do. And I think what's important as scientists is that we go back and look at why those forecasts were wrong, and then to help improve our models and help improve the assumptions that go into them.
So, Dr. Orff, how do folks get in touch with you, find you on the internet?
Sure. I have a very unique name, Lee Orff, Leighorf. I'm the only one in the world. And if you could find another one, I would love to meet him or her, because my name is spelled in a way that could go either way. But I have a website, orff.media, and I have a contact form. You can contact me. I love hearing from folks who are looking at the stuff I do. I've sort of fallen into this pattern of all the talks I give are now put online with all the graphics. I just stick my voice on after the fact, since you don't need to look at my mug to hear the talk. So I just put them out there, all the errors or whatever. I don't edit any of it out. It's all just there, and it's also a way for me to become a better presenter. But I'm happy. Just shoot me, fill out the form, and I'll be happy to talk to you and get in touch and have a little conversation.
Your most recent presentation in March is 50 minutes well spent. I can assure you of that. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
So Mark, anything you have to add, and remind folks how they can find your wonderful podcast?
Sure. They can find the podcast at whatisitabouttheweather.com. The podcast is done weekly, and it's really focused on not so much what a lot of the conversation is here, but more about relating weather to common everyday life and some of the topics that we deal with every day and how weather is intertwined. They can also follow me on the various social media platforms at Mark_Jelinek, and that's Jelinek.
Outstanding. Well, thank you for being here. It's been really fun getting to know all of our friends that have started all these additional wonderful podcasts through National Weather Podcast Month, which was last month. And we've made a lot of new friends. Thank you for being with us tonight, Mark.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, Aubrey, can you add anything, or you're good? Okay. Well, it's good to see you tonight, Aubrey. Thank you for being here. Rick, anything to add?
No, I know Aubrey can't talk, but I just wanted to say that would have been my pick if you wouldn't have gotten it. So the Helicity designs. In fact, I had a little interaction with them on Twitter last week when this PDS watch business was going on, and I said they need a "I love PDS" sarcastically T-shirt. Within 5 minutes, they had it on their site. So if you've got an idea, they do listen on Twitter. So. I haven't dealt with them personally, and I don't have any stock or anything. It's just they just seem like a cool company and lots of cool shirts. So, but no, I don't have anything really interesting stuff tonight, and as usual.
Yeah, I'll be out your way the final week of the month. We'll be talking to a hotel group in southern Oklahoma about severe weather. So I'm really excited about that. So
okay, well, hopefully you don't have any real life severe weather to talk about. Seems like you've been in that boat before, though.
So good to see you tonight, Rick.
Good to see you.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
all right.
I guess if we don't have any additional business, we'll adjourn till next week when I don't have a guest weather brain right now because Lance Rothfuse, who is our guest, had to push back to Monday, June the 12th. So we might just have you again, Dr. Orr, if you were so fascinating. I think I have another 50 questions for you. And Mark, if you're not doing anything, we'll just do this all over again like Groundhog Day. But,
hey, Bill, can I say one more quick thing? Yes, I'm sorry. You mentioned National Podcasting Month, and I don't know if we ever wrapped it up, but we did this Weather Podcast Challenge. And I can't remember, I think of the 8 weather podcasts that were part of that group, at least 7 of them now, and it may be 8 by now, have been recognized as Weather Ready Nation ambassadors. So everybody stepped up, and I think the podcast really exemplify what an ambassador is about and helping spread the word. So thanks to everybody for participating, and that was really cool.
Well, that was a great challenge, and I'm glad to see that everyone stepped to the plate and did their part, Rick. So that was outstanding, laying down the gauntlet because that is an important concept. But after that, we'll be talking to Dr. Sean Miller about the AMS Washington Forum on the 24th. We'll have Dave Freeman from Wichita. He's retiring, and we're going to roast him on Monday, May the 8th. And then we'll have the weather couple, Jen Watts and Ari Sarsalari, coming over on June the 5th. They're expecting a child in August, and we'll have them. And then, like I said, Lance Rothfuse will join us on June the 12th. This is WeatherBrains, the weekly netcast that's all about weather. We do it every Monday night, generally, unless there's a major football or basketball championship going on that we are involved in some way or another. But we're usually here on Monday night. I've been here for nearly 600 episodes. It's hard to imagine that we've done it all this time. But for James Spann and all the rest of the group here sitting around the digital mahogany table, I'm Bill Murray, and I'll see you next week. So, and we're clear.
All
Dr.
right.
Worf, thank you so much. Fascinating.
Sure. A lot of fun. Yep.
All right.
Take care, you guys.
Stay in touch.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Mark, so great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
I mean, anytime you got a standing invite.
All right. Well, anytime you want to talk this topic, I'd be glad to, if you find yourself in need, just let me know. As Brian Fontana would say, 60% of the time, it works every time. So
well, it's outstanding to have you on tonight. We'll do it again.
You guys take care.
Have a good night.
See ya.
No, they're gone. And this is always the strange part of this. Look down here. There's like 18 people watching nothing. I just don't understand that. So let me turn my camera back on. So we are now simulcasting on Song of the Night and WeatherBrains. Song of the Night's on Periscope, WeatherBrains on YouTube. But thanks, great show tonight. Fascinating stuff. Loved it. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll see you guys next Monday night on WeatherBrains. So we're going to sign off. You'll have a great week. Have a good night, and God bless.